Welcome to the newest sect of Monstieur, known as Dark Tales.
Ooh.
In this podcast, we are here to discuss not only the visual designs, but also spend time discussing different elements of the topic of discussion. I am your host, CJ Marsh, illustrator, concept artist. With me is the enchanting and lovely as ever, Amir Alam.
What up?
And James starr-king, the king of stars, and we're not referring to David Bowie.
Hey.
This week's topic is Diablo, the Lord of Terror, from the Blizzard franchise. For as long as man fears the dark, Diablo will remain the most insidious and, I would argue, the most powerful of all the evils. So, guys, we'll just go ahead and open up this with a quick question. When did you guys learn about Diablo, and what was your kind of favorite and first experiences with it, carried over till now?
Well, personally, I just first saw it at Walmart, that whole battle chest thing. And yeah, it just looked so dope because you had that skull in the front for D2, and then D1 just had like Tim Curry Diablo just grimacing at you. You just have to buy it, right? So you spend your what was it at the time? $40.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Blizzard just grabs you by your ankles, shakes you down for all your money with a cool ass cover. You come home, you open it up, you install it, and you're reading the manuals, trying to figure out what the hell to do. And then you just get grabbed by it. The atmosphere, the dark tone. I personally, I started out with Diablo 1. And then I died a lot in fighting the Skeleton King as a kid. And I went over to Diablo 2, and my build with the Necromancer was shit. It was too scatterbrained, so I couldn't get past Duriel. And it was at that point that I went back to D1, and I'm glad that I did, because personally I find the tone of Diablo, I don't know, the one that resonated with me the most after playing it was totally D1. And I think that that's really important if you're in our position and you're trying to redesign Diablo, because the tone was just so concise in D1. In D2, it became a little bit more arcadey, but the tone was still there, and they did a great job with the sequel. A lot because a lot of people from the original team were there, and they love metal and dark fantasy and all of that. So I think that it transferred over well, and a lot of people who started with D2, and one of the reasons why I'm most glad that I started with D1 is because I feel like a lot of people who didn't play D1, they don't really get it. You know, they don't get how dark and sinister Diablo is as a character, and I hope that during this podcast we're going to be able to clear some of that up and show Diablo in the true light of being the Lord of Terror and not just the big red dude dragon at the end of the game of D2. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What about you, starr-king?
My introduction, I don't remember how old I was, but I started with Diablo, the first one. And I was at a friend's house, and he had it, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And I thought it was so awesome. And so on that weekend, I went out and got the game for myself, installed it, and then the first encounter I remember was the butcher, right? There was a butcher in that. And I was hooked. I just loved it. I loved the tone. I loved the soundtrack. Yeah, that was my introduction to Diablo. Was the first one, and I played it all the time.
I think my first one, I actually didn't start with Diablo 1. I started off with Diablo 2, actually. I didn't play Diablo 1 till like years later. Um, but I remember, as you said, Amir, like going to Walmart and seeing like the Diablo battle chest. And this was back in the day when you could like play games at the Walmart or the Best Buy that you're at. We went to Walmart and we saw that battle chest with Diablo 2, and we were looking at it, and back then you could open it up and you could see the inside of the book, and like see like all the artwork and like like pictures of gameplay, and people were like, oh, here's the sorcerer, here's the barbarian, like here's all the different classes you could play as. And I remember seeing it with my dad, and me and him both said it looked really cool, and I was drawn to that skull on the front of it because I don't know, just that art that was done by originally by Gerald Brom, um, and then later kind of like they edited it out to what it was on the front cover. It snagged me, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then we took it home, and it was kind of the rest was history at that point. We just kind of dove hours into just not even just hours. We probably have like years of gameplay between me, my dad, and my brother. All three of us just playing it over and over again.
That's cute. So it was like a family activity after school.
Yeah, something like that. My dad still plays Diablo to this day. Actually, like he's a huge Diablo nut. Like he plays Diablo 3 and goes on like he goes on the what are they called now? The the thing where you can like go on to like different levels of the different hells and like kind of gain prestige and shit like that. Like he's my dad's really into it.
That's cool. So wait, I got a question. What I want to get a good idea of what your family life was like. Well, what classes did you guys play? Well, what roles did you fill in the team?
So my dad played the barbarian always.
Oh, he's the core of the group. Yeah, head
So
of the family.
yeah, but he also like played all of them like eventually, and I think barbarian was the first one I remember him playing, and it was the first one I played too, but I was hooked on the necro, just because like necro was I, dude summoning skeletons, like I was already hooked on that.
Were you
Um,
the younger brother?
I was
By
the
any
oldest.
chance? Oh, you're the oldest. Okay, so you were the
Yeah.
cool necro. Okay.
Yeah, and then my little brother, he played the paladin, but then once we got the second expansion, like he was all druid. Like that was his jam.
Druid's dope. There's a lot of utility in that class.
Mm-hmm.
You got like meteors, and you can turn into a wolf or a bear. Yeah, that shit's dope.
He was all about that hurricane where you just like turn it on and then just like walk through everything and just it all dies.
Nice. That's dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good team comp for you guys just to bond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we still try to play like from time to time here and there, but like between like schedules, and my brother's in the military now, so he's in Japan time, and it just our time zones just don't ever line up, and it just I'm always busy, my dad's always busy kind of thing. It just we don't get as much time in it as we wish we could.
Mm, I feel that. I feel that. Yeah, D2 became the bonding game for me and my friends. Uh, like when I was younger, it was more of like a refuge game where you just have to like get away from school, get away from all that, and
Mm-hmm.
just like kill demons for a while. But now that I'm older, I rediscovered the game, and me and my buddies from work, we play that, and it's just like we get so close when we play that game because
Mm-hmm.
what we do with the game is we go on like a 20-hour about 20-hour binge of the game, and we get 8 of us in a garage. We all hook up to the modem and we try to figure out how to use it with BattleNet. And there's a lot of weird ass stuff that BattleNet does with like logging in with the same IP. So we have to get that to work. But once we get that working fine, we get a good 8-man going, and what we do is we just keep going east for like just 20 hours, and we play it in a way that's a little different than the way most people play it. So what we do is we go through the game. We only stop in town when the quests make us go to town, and that's when we can like buy things, gamble, do whatever. But other than that, we don't use TP. Like, we don't go back when our items are full. You have to do inventory management the whole time, and we're on a time crunch because the goal of the day is to go through normal mode, nightmare, and hell, all without dying, and without using TPs, without grinding. You just keep going. You keep going down into hell, and that's kind of our dream. We haven't done it yet, but we will. in one sitting, the goal is to go straight to hell, through hell mode, and kill Diablo, and don't die once. And the way that night goes is basically like everybody pretty much survives normal mode, and that's like the longest bit. That one takes a good like 8 hours, 10 hours sometimes, depending on how fast we can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then nightmare mode, we generally lose half the group. Well, no, we all die, but halfway through nightmare mode, half of the group dies, and then on the second half, the second half of the group dies. But it's still like a really awesome like journey because you all just get picked off one by one, and then you have your friends, the dead souls of your comrades, just sitting on the couch, taunting you with pizza and Mountain Dew.
Just like, you can do this.
Oh
Oh, man.
They want you to die so they can play something else. So you're just like, we're gonna keep going, and then every time somebody dies, it's like a big event.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds so much fun.
Yeah, that game's great. What about you, starr-king?
Yeah.
What did Diablo 2 generally consist of, in terms of like what the game really meant to you?
It was a bonding thing, too. Like with my friends, we would get together and play. Or what were those back in the day? The like those internet kind of cafe things. It was specifically for gaming. Um, we would have his big brother like drive us to this place, so we could like play together. I always played the sorcerer. Um, and yeah, it was like you guys said, it was definitely a bonding type of experience. Um, One that I feel like I don't with games I don't get as strong of a feeling today.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, there's been few games that I've like ran into where it's become as big of an event as Diablo ever was, because
Mhm.
like with what Amir you were saying, like me and my buddies would always try to, or like me and my brother and my dad would always like, okay, we got the next piece of the set, or I got to grind so I can get, the full set of Talrajas, or we got to get the new rune word when those were a thing. Like, we got to get the new item and everything like that. It was always a lot of fun.
I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that. Yeah, for us, the way we played, we didn't have time to grind, so always the new thing that we'd get and bond over was just like that new thing that you picked up, that random fucking item that you were just like, oh shit, now I could do more cold damage. All right.
Dude, I remember when I found my first set piece and like how excited I was because I was like, I got something with green letters now. Like, what does green letters do? Um, and it was just so cool. And then when I found out there was like those legendary set pieces that if you got all the pieces together, your character would glow. And I was just like, oh, dude, I gotta get that shit. And oh man, it was just so much fun.
I feel that. Diablo was a good game. My buddies, the ones that I play with, they reintroduced me to the game when the game first came out for them. When D2 came out, because they were in it from the beginning. They didn't battle chest that shit.
Mm-hmm.
They they ordered it, and they're a couple of guys from like Seattle, like Washington or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't Seattle. They lived out in Washington, like where their neighbors were cows. So they had to get that stuff like in the mail. And when it came in the mail, I'll never forget when my buddy told me that what he said when he got Diablo in the mail. He said, "Diablo 2, it's finally here." And they're country guys, you know? And that was the first time I've ever heard Diablo said Diablo. So so they were just so excited to have it when it first came out. And that was back when modems only did kilobits, right?
Oh yeah.
So like they really like reintroduced me to like a proper LAN party, because they were doing LAN parties like in the middle of nowhere. And with like they had to like create these giant Ethernet cables to span the house and get all their friends in there just to play Diablo 2 like a proper 8-man.
Yeah.
You know, the lengths that people go to play a good game back in the day.
I remember back in the day, me and my friends used to do that, but we had like the little adapters that could connect two of them together. And then there was like this long cable that went from like room to room, and one went upstairs to another friend's computer, and we're just like, okay. And this was before like Skype or like even Ventrilo was kind of a thing back then, but barely. So instead of like doing voice chats, we just screamed across the room. Just like, hey, I need potions.
That's funny. Hey, no, give me that large charm. No, I need it.
Exactly that. So that kind of transitions to the next thing I was going to ask you guys. So like, what's like probably your favorite experiences and moments throughout Diablo? Like, is there anything that like jumped out at you guys that you could, to this day, will still always be one of your favorite things that you ever did?
What first comes to mind, because okay, so the people who I play with, they're my boss. I work at Hitbox, so I have Dustin and Sean, and we play with FGC crowd. Immediately I want to say that when Ryan LV won Evo, we did like in his honor, we did an 8-man run. And it was so funny seeing Ryan LV in that climate, because Ryan LV, he plays 2 games. He plays Marvel and Diablo 2. So it was interesting to see just how like dedicated he was. He just pick up items like immediately. But I'd say in terms of my actual favorite moment though, it wasn't that. It was when we did another 8-man. Dustin's friends came in from Seattle, and we were in the expansion pack, is Lords of Destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to drone metal. There's this band called Bong.
I know Bong.
Okay, cool. So I was listening to their album. I think it's just Bong by Bong. It's just Bong. And there was this weird, surreal moment that happened to me that my friend snapped me out of, thankfully. But for 45 minutes, that droning, like that metal, it put me into this trance-like state. I was playing a summon necro, so it was extra brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I fell asleep at the wheel, but I was still playing the game. So I'm running around with the necro, just summoning skeletons, doing corpse explosion and amplify when I can. But I was doing like a lot of weird stuff, like I was lagging behind the group and I wasn't getting the XP, and I was just drone metaled out. And I was doing that for about 45 minutes before my friends, they snapped me out of it. They said, "Hey Amir, take off your headphones and contribute. Like, talk to us. What's going on? You're just in your little corner, just walking around with the summon necro doing God knows what. What's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, man. That music got me high. Like, there's something about this whole experience that just literally just fried my brain. Because it
Yeah.
was so just like brain dead, like summon necro, walking through just and then we still had about like 5 hours ahead of us after that. So yeah, it was a crazy night. That's my most memorable moment. The most memorable thing was that I didn't remember like 45 minutes. I just completely spaced out. It was like in total zen mode.
Dude, I can imagine that. Especially with that, like just that. If anyone's never listened to Bong, like it's not for everybody. It definitely isn't for everybody, and it's one of those like it's just music to just zone out to.
Yeah, and zone out I did.
Well, what about you, starr-king? You got any memorable moments that you can think of?
Not really specific moments. I think just in general, just have memories of sitting around with my friends, and playing Diablo, and dying a lot
Mm-hmm.
at first. But yeah, nothing really specific.
I think for me, my most memorable moment I think is when I think it was either my dad or I think it was my dad. My dad was the first one to get to what was called nightmare or hell mode, and we all basically were okay, cool, next level. We thought it was just we didn't really know exactly what it was. So we started watching, I think my dad was playing through it, and then we realized that the items that you could pick up were the same skinned items, but they were renamed differently and statted for like a higher level play. And that was something that I think all of us were like, to this day, I remember when we found, what was it? It was like a demon skin leather leather armor or something like that. And we were like, dude, that's so cool. And it was like a yellow item. It had like all this like crazy stats, and we were in like green armor sets, and we're like, holy crap, this is so much better than what the shit we're wearing. So what the hell? Like this is insane. And then it just got bigger and better, and then we learned about, the rune words, and then like the super sets that you could get, like Immortal Kings and Talrajas. And I think my favorite one was when I got the full set for, I think it's Trag Owl's set for the Necro, because it turns you into a vampire.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
remember you told me a few days ago when we were talking about Diablo and I was playing Barbarian. You told me about that set, and I totally didn't even know about it. And I play Necro a lot, so I was like, what? You can look like a vampire? Even so, it's weird how those epiphanies happen even to this day. You're just like, oh my, I can look like a vampire.
yeah, dude. It
That's
was
dope.
it was so cool because like at the part that kind of sucks is like when I played him, I made a summon Necro, and at a certain point, you kind of forget what your model looks like, and you're got all these massive amounts of monsters and creatures with you. And I was in Act 3, and I was in the basement where all those like vampire dudes are like shooting fireballs and stuff at you. And I also had revive, and I revived a bunch of those guys with me, so they had the same model that I had. And I'm going through all of it, and I'm just like, wait a minute, where the hell am I? Where's my character?
That's dope. That's also kind of like, that's scary, right? Because then you go through like what, Pandemonium Fortress, and you got those electric shooting ghosts, and you have to dodge those electric bolts that pierce through your creep.
Oh my god, I don't know how many times I died to those.
Yeah, because you lose track of your character model if you're playing Summon Necro.
Mm-hmm. Electricity was like the bane of your existence as a player. It always killed you.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about it. That and Act 2, those wraiths in Act 2.
Mm-hmm.
That was like really responsible for a lot of our deaths in our runs.
The mana draining ones.
Yep.
Ugh, they're the worst.
Yeah, they were cool.
All right. Well, since we're talking about more stuff, let's move on to uh, basically let's talk about the design of Diablo, like the original David Brevik design of the big red dragon man that we all fought at the end of Diablo. Do you guys have any thoughts on like the original design, or like any kind of things you would like to talk about with that?
Yeah. Well, personally, I'm like super connected to that design because for me, growing up, I'm like a huge metalhead, so I really resonated a lot with just like the big red devil dude.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Curry in Legend. Then you had that devil in Tenacious D,
Mm-hmm.
and Diablo just fit right in. He's like the buff version. He's stacked, bro. So it's like, um, it was immediately just like one of the coolest things ever. It wasn't really scary, um, but it was so cool. And um, I think challenged with redesigning it for Monstieur, I realized that it is actually a contradictory design that um, I don't know how I feel about it anymore. Like I'm tied to the aesthetic and I love the aesthetic, but when you tie it to the lore and you say like Lord of Terror, um, it's it the design doesn't obviously scream terror. Like Diablo 1, it kind of does because you have his skull face with the pus coming out, like with the opening cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
You know how, like, when you first boot up Diablo 1, you have Diablo, like, at the end of it going, and you see his, like, the pus coming out of his mouth and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that was very Lord of Terror. But even in Diablo 1, you have that contradiction between that cutscene, how he looks and the ending cutscene, and how he looks on the box art. Because on the box art, he looks like a Warcraft orc, but a devil. And I remember reading somewhere that D1 had a lot of Warcraft influence. And when redesigning it, I realized that a lot of that stuff, it didn't really scream Lord of Terror in an obvious way.
Mm-hmm.
So I started having a problem with like when you're thinking about the lore a little too much, which is not something you should do if you're a consumer, but only like if you're a designer like us.
Yeah.
It kind of started giving me questions as to how I could make it cool because because when you're redesigning it, you're thinking, I have to make it the Lord of Terror, and then you push it into a direction of like skulls and darkness, and then you look at your design, and if you're connected to the original design, you're like, oh, but it's not big red dude enough, because
Yeah.
that's the Diablo we grew up with, and then you fall into that train of thought so much that you go, oh, now I'm just drawing a big red dude, and this is also not cool because that's been done a million times by this point. And I guess in that same vein, I can kind of understand now, like years later, why they went the way they did in D3 as well, and even D2. D2 they went like more dragon, and then D3 they turned him into a girl with mouth shoulders, which we all just hated when it came out. But at the same time, like what else can you do? Like I can't 100% blame them, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, starr-king?
I I really liked the design of the original D1 Diablo. I like that they took the idea of what everybody usually has when they think of like the devil or something like that, like big red dude, I think. But they pushed it more to, I don't know, I think appeal to, that kind of more metal male kind of audience. Um, and so I thought that was uh, smart. I thought he was great design in the first one. And I was talking to Amir about how I liked the third Diablo earlier, um, because I like the mix of um, the feminine but still sort of grotesque.
Yeah, she was 50 feet tall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was, I don't know, that final design with 3 was, I felt like they had something potentially there, but I wasn't like sold on it either. Like for me, like it I'm also kind of a super nerd because I went into the books and like I went into like deep lore with Diablo and all that stuff like that. And one of the books that I remember reading was talking about the Lord of Terror, and throughout the book, like it doesn't, it's set takes place in the world of Sanctuary where everything is going on. But the thing that they don't really touch up on in the book that I remember reading was they talk about demons, they talk about angels, but you don't have any interaction with them until like a part of the book. One of these like little underling demons that we've been following around scurries up into this like down this like hallway, and as they're scurrying into this hallway, they're talking to, you think they're talking to themselves, it sounds like, but then you start realizing they're actually talking to another figure, and the figure that they're talking to is Diablo, and because they refer to them as the Lord of Terror. And what they do is they describe how this creature keeps shifting between a like a melted skull with flesh still hanging on to it. Then it shifts to a dragon-like creature, and like he can't really pinpoint what this creature looks like because he just has this aura of terror about him. And I think as a designer, it's also kind of hard to really bring that to a physical form.
Yeah, the amorphous quality of Diablo was definitely underrepresented in the games. But at the same time, like, imagine we're in the 90s and you need a boss at the end of your game that's metal as fuck, and it's not like an amorphous kind of being that's like skulls and pure terror and hatred, just kind of, it doesn't seem like it's easy to do at the end of like your isometric title. You know, so like I think that like a lot of what makes Diablo at the time is due to the fact that they were designing for a game, and
Oh, yeah.
you have to have like a big red dragon at the end of it that you have to fight and kill, and make him look as metal as possible, and that's true. But also, I think that um, when you do go back and you add story to that sort of thing, like more story, he's the Lord of Terror, and now you have to talk about what is the core essential to being the Lord of Terror, and what does that mean? They ended up putting a lot more things to Diablo to make him ultimately way more interesting, and he is like actually, when you think about it, he's like a genius type character. He's like an evil mastermind, and I think that it, like all the retconning they did, it actually made the character more interesting, way more cool, and also in the process kind of made us think like, well, why is he just a big red dragon? Like, why isn't he this amorphous concept of pure terror? Well, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why does he just have that physical form?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's something I tried to touch on in my redesign as well, because that's something that I think is now essential to Diablo, and honestly, something I'd really like to see in Diablo 4 if they ever, in the beginning of my redesign, I was thinking like, he's a big red dude, like he should be a big red dude in Diablo 4. After the redesign, now I'm thinking if they found a way to kind of mix the two concepts, like I did, haha, tooting my own horn. If they if they found a way to mix those two concepts, what you were talking about with the amorphous creature
Hmm.
and big red dude, I think that would be like a solid hit, in my opinion. What do you
Absolutely.
think? What would you like to see him for?
Uh, for me, I think one of the things I would like, I like the fact that we're kind of getting away from the the three main primeval guys. Like we're kind of going into uh, Diablo's niece. So like with Lilith coming out, like I like the fact that we're getting like kind of a new face or like a new something new. But I really hope they do find a way to bring Diablo back in some shape or form. But I want to see. I don't know. I would love to see like a different take on him, but like also give like some homage to the old one. Uh, so like in my design, I'm trying. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but like what I said is one thing I always liked was that terror aspect. And in my opinion, one of the things that I always thought was cool with terror is, or I associated with terror is, I'm a big H.P. Lovecraft fan. And, one of the things that he touches on is, the unknown and the terror of not knowing what's coming and like that cosmic horror kind of aspect to it, which in a way is kind of what Diablo is he's a entity of just raw pure power, and to like show him at his like full potentially just that full strength of who he is. Because another thing that I thought about reading into some of the old books and watching some of the old cutscenes again was Diablo in every iteration of the game that we've seen has needed a human host of some kind.
I was just about to say that and ask you about that, so continue. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So my thought is like the host that we see all the time always has to take shape into this like big red dragon man or dragon woman as we see in Diablo 3. So like I would love to see like in Diablo 4 the raw power of Diablo. Like what does he look like if he doesn't have a host? Like, does he need one, or like if we're gonna go into the depths of hell, like can we see what that giant big red Lord of Terror looks like? Like that's what I would love to see if they could execute that in some way. Oof, oof.
Yeah, that would be cool. You know, that gets me thinking. All the primevals, right? Talraja, Mephisto, Diablo.
Or
We've only
Bale.
ever. Oh, sorry, Bale. Um, Bale. So it's Bale, Mephisto, Diablo.
Yep, that's the three.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, they we only ever see them with human hosts,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I think so. Um,
Yeah.
Mephisto's kind of the questionable one because he just kind of shows up in Diablo 2. Like
Uh,
because we just like end up in that act.
oh, right. You're right. You're right. Because in that cutscene, it's Mephisto, the Wanderer, and Talraja,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So it's weird that only the lesser evils you see their true form, like Lazarus. Is that his name?
Lazarus. Oh,
The end of 3.
the end of 3. Oh, Diablo 3. That is. Oh God, what's his name? Um, we have. Let me just pull out my tome here that has all the Malathael
Malathiel.
or Malthiel, the
Wait.
Archangel of Wisdom.
No. That's at the end of Reaper of Souls, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
the last boss of D3, the big fat dude with the two faces and the giant three-part mouth.
Oh, that's Asmodeus, or not as?
Asmo
Yeah,
Asmodan.
Asmodan. Yeah.
That's the guy. Yeah, that lesser evil after all the other ones died. Uh I think he was true form, right?
I think so.
Because
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of the lesser evils, like Duriel as well. Duriel was a lesser evil. We saw him in his true form.
Yeah. I think
And
on Dariel's questionable because she also was like manipulating all those like uh Amazons and Rangers and shit like that.
yeah.
But I think that she was true form too.
Was she?
Might be.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like we get all the lesser evils in their true forms, but two of our prime evils, we've never seen their true form.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm actually kind of disappointed that Lilith um was kind of born with a true form. Maybe they could have done it a little cooler.
Well, my thought with that is maybe it's not so much a thing of they have a true form, and it's more of a the primevals are so powerful that they have to piggyback onto someone who can manifest in this realm.
hmm
That makes sense.
Yeah, starr-king, what's your thoughts on it?
I think there's something even. I mean, I guess the point is to design these things, but a lot of times I feel like fear is not knowing or not seeing something. So when they showed the true forms of the lesser evils, I feel like that makes them a little less scary to me because you really don't know what Diablo's true form is. And that's sort of what I think about that.
I feel that. I
Yeah,
feel that.
yeah,
Yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about this concept of like Diablo being that amorphous concept of terror, I think back to the opening cinematic of D2.
Mm-hmm.
You know how the Wanderer goes into the tavern and Tristram and kills everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All that random stuff that was happening around him.
All the skeletons like rip out of the ground, and the demons come and tear people apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. But at the end of the first Diablo, isn't it like, was it when you beat him, you get this gem or stone, right? Or
Yeah.
something like that, and then your character or the character in the thematic like shoves it in his forehead or something like that.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I feel like you said, it's like that concept of evil. You know, it's sort of this uh allure of power or whatever, more the concept of what he is and what he actually looks like. That's so terrifying.
Yeah. Well put.
Yeah.
Well put. Yeah. There's definitely poetic metaphors in the Wanderer just sticking the gem into his skull.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of that, you're like, awesome, I did it. Great, we just defeated evil. And then you're like, wait, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It shows it into his forehead, and it's such a brutal thing too if you were there watching this person just do that to themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe that he did it because he needed to trap Diablo in some way, shape, or form, and he thought that he was strong enough to carry it with him and fight the demon all like for the rest of his life, and never let Diablo kind of manifest with anybody else and corrupt somebody
mm,
else.
So
mhm,
I got a
mhm.
little mindfucky thing for you guys. Uh, so I did some digging a while back, and because when Diablo 3 came out, there was that whole speculation that the barbarian you get to play is the older version of the barbarian from Diablo 2. Well, one of the things that they talk about, and we find out that it's not, but we find out that in Diablo 1, and this is one of the things that I think is really cool about the character Diablo, is that which makes him so much more terrifying is like no matter who deals with Diablo, they're changed. There's always something left about them that either it corrupts or it like changes that person. So in Diablo 1 you have the sorcerer, you have the warrior, and you have I think it's the ranger or like the Amazon kind of thing.
The rogue.
Mhm.
The rogue, yeah. So those three characters are in Diablo 2. Um, so the Wanderer is originally the warrior. So he's the one that takes the soul stone and jams it into his forehead, thinking he's powerful enough to contain it till they can figure out what's going on. The rogue is Bloodraven from Diablo 2.
Yeah.
And then the sorcerer is the summoner that you fight in Act 2 when you go into Horizon's sanctuary, or that like that trippy space place.
Yeah. Underneath the castle.
Yeah, yeah, that is the sorcerer you played as, and it talks about how the reason he's there was he was trying to find a way to help the warrior, but in doing so, not only did he get corrupted, the warrior, which is now the Wanderer, got corrupted. Bloodraven, she got corrupted. Like it's kind of like a resonating thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
I also think here's the weird part though, right? Because they only from what I remember, Bloodraven, what was she was she always terrorizing like that area around the rogue encampment? Like how long was she doing that? What was cuz from what I remember, all of that weird stuff happens after the wanderer passes through the area, right?
I think how I remember, and I'm probably talking out of my ass on this one just because it's been a hot minute. I think Bloodraven fell in battle, like to fight Diablo's forces, and she was given that honored burial. And then after the Wanderer left, and Diablo started corrupting, and Dariel started getting her hands on everybody, that's when Bloodraven kind of came back to, she came forth and was like, yeah, I'm here to fuck shit up.
That makes sense because you fight her in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Cool.
it's super smart, like little tiny Easter eggs that, like, if you're a first time player, you don't pay any attention to it. You're like, okay, cool, Bloodraven, I'm gonna go kick her ass.
Go east.
And then, go east.
Yeah. But yeah, continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh no, you're fine. And that was the thing that I always thought was like super cool, and I've done a little bit of digging about the Diablo 2 characters, and they're mentioned in Diablo 3, and like there's parts of them that have been like, there's like parts where they're mentioned through like little voice texts or like little chat boxes, but I don't know if they're like actually in the game though.
From what I read, because I haven't played Diablo 3, I don't think my heart can handle seeing Deckard Cain get a butterfly death. Spoilers. But, and oh my god, from what I hear from my friend, he was so mortified when you just have this like metaphorical walking corpse of Deckard Cain walking you through Disneyland, being like, and now here's this butterfly demon, and oh, look at that. It's just like, oh my god, kill me. Just kill Deckard Cain already. Keep him out of this. Don't soil my fucking. Anyway, but I didn't play Diablo 3, but from what I read, they they uh they did a lot of kind of retconning, but also like elaboration on the story of D2 and 1. There was this whole segment in D3 where they were talking about how Lazarus, the king of the town, or one of the main characters in Diablo 1, and how he went insane and got corrupted by Diablo, and how like the king of the town became the skeleton king, and how he killed his own wife because he thought that she was conspiring against him, and like all of that stuff. Like I watched that. There was this scene in Diablo 3 where she has her head in the guillotine, and with her last breath she's still denying that she would ever conspire against him and that she loves him, and like she gets guillotined and her head kind of thuds on the floor and shit. So yeah, you're right. From what I see, the Diablo 3 was trying to elaborate on the story a little bit more, for sure.
Yeah.
Did they talk? So, did they talk about any of those characters from D2, like specifically?
So there's one mention of it because you run into a necromancer in Act 2 when you're in the desert. Yeah, you're in Act 2. You run into a necromancer that's helping you throughout the game, and he mentions his master, and that his master that he's referring to is specifically the necromancer from Diablo 1 or 2. And yeah, but like he doesn't know where his master is. He says his master's been missing for a hot minute and he's trying to find him. So you're trying to help him, but like throughout your quest, like you're trying to do your shit, and which is kind of cool. And I like the fact that they didn't really like I like it, but I don't like it at the same time. Where they're like, "Here, we're gonna go help find the thing you're looking for. Your master is just not among our priorities, so we're gonna do the thing that's more important," which I like, but I kind of would like to know like what the fuck happened to him.
Yeah, I feel that. I also heard, or I read somewhere that the sorceress also had a protege that was referenced in D3.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I can't remember who it was though. Um,
It's all good.
yeah, no, there's a bunch of people that they mentioned that the characters are mentioned, but I don't know if they're like actually prevalent. I think it. I may be again talking out of my ass, but I think one or two of them actually have gotten corrupted because of the shit that they had to go through. Because I mean, hell, those guys. If you think about it, the characters you played in Diablo 2, you went all over the world. You went to hell, you went to heaven, and then you had to go into the heart of the world to fight another one of the primevals. Like those people are broken. Though, like there's some fucked up shit going on with them.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. What's it called? Um, I was thinking about how Diablo Reaper of Souls had you fighting an actual angel. What are your thoughts on Malthael?
So my thoughts are, I'm glad that they started bringing more of the angels into it, especially in Diablo 3. Um, and I think I don't know if I like how they did with like Malthael and everything like that, because like the whole idea of I'm the angel of death kind of thing was kind of okay, but I mean the game's Diablo. Like our whole thing is about fighting off demons and the hells, and like the angels were always helpful, and like our ever any of the experiences we always had was with Tyrael, who was always, he was our buddy, like he was there to help.
Yeah.
And like to have all these other angels, which I kind of do like the idea of showing like the other sides of all of them. But even in Diablo 3 there was a bunch of them that were still like friends and like helped us out that we like saw throughout the game. But then there was like one or
Yeah.
two that were just like, yeah, yeah, fuck you guys, you're humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that. I'm kind of miffed that they went deep into the heaven side of things because this is Diablo, and secondly, like the trope of divine intervention is so deeply ingrained in Western culture, and we kind of already know what divine intervention is supposed to be like, and it comes um, when you do a story like Diablo, where you go into hell and you fight shit. I think that showing heaven is kind of a
Ballsy move.
yeah, it's a ballsy move, and I don't really quite agree with it because you're supposed to like the the poetic concept of like doing good in the face of evil is supposed to be like the choice of the person, and also it has a lot to do with faith.
Mm-hmm.
And why would you have faith in something that you already saw? You know, like when you show the audience heaven, you remove the concept of faith from the the battle between good and evil, and you're supposed to choose good also with just that kind of faith that in the long run your good action will pay off, right? Isn't that the poetic concept that kind of permeates Western culture? It's like evil is that short term kind of answer to your problems that's easy to do, but you have to choose the good option because it's the right thing to do, and you have faith in goodness, and you don't give in to that temptation. And I think that concept kind of um, how do I put it? That concept is elucidated in literature and media by having hell and demons be things that you could see and fight off, and having angels and heaven be things that you could only get glimpses of.
Yeah.
And Yeah,
Hmm.
and the concept of like the guardian angel, or like Gabriel coming down to like save you or whatever. That's like the closest you're going to get to ever see uh heaven or anything good, like really just like forcing their hand on you because you need it, because you are smack dab in the middle of the battle for the cosmos, you know?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I always thought was kind of cool with Diablo is the that kind of back and forth between light and the dark, and like how we are representing the forces of light, and we're here to fight off the demonic incursion. And then like in Diablo 3, you just go straight up to heaven, and you see the angels fighting off demons and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, that's cool, but like you're kind of getting that, like you're personifying the light and the good, and the people that are, or the characters that are personifying the light and the good, are not necessarily the best characters either. So I
Yeah.
think what's kind of cool with Diablo especially is they give us like kind of that gray area to work with. And especially with the necromancer, like they always talk about, the balance, and like how to keep the balance between the light and the dark in check always. And it's I that is the thing I always resonated with it, because I always thought that was what humanity should be like representing, is like we are that balance between good and evil. And we're here to fight off these fuckhead demons who are the purest of evil. But then like they throw in the angels, and I feel like if they were to have done that, I think one of the things they could have done better was to make the angels a more, maybe the extreme good side, to the point of like we have to fight them off now too.
I think that's what they did in 3. From what I read about it, Imperius was a dick.
Yeah, I think more, instead of, and what I mean, not necessarily in just like a, because they do it in 3, but it's more of a singular character that has that kind of role. I meant just like in general, like all of the heavens is kind of like, yeah, we're gonna smite the world.
I feel you. I don't agree with it though. But yeah, they do it with Imperius. They do it with Malthael, right? He becomes the Angel of Death.
Yeah.
But my own views on like on storytelling really prevent me from. Man, you know what? I I can see where you're coming from. I can see how your view on storytelling and literature and like philosophy can lead you to believe that the humans are like the balance between good and evil, because it's more relativist, which is cool. And I have some of that in me as well.
Yeah.
But I think when we're talking about like the reason I don't really like that direction is that this the concept of heaven versus hell is built on good versus evil tropes, right? And the way that story's always been told is just kind of like it kind of forces, or not forces you, but it encourages you to do the good thing and be on the side of good, and not be the wishy-washy like I stand for nothing, I'm in the middle, I don't care, like I'm neither good nor evil, like that. The heaven versus hell trope for the longest time has been uh choose good, even in the face of like you have something to gain from doing evil. Um, and personally, just with my own storytelling technique and analysis, I'd lean more towards that traditional um, depiction of the trope.
No, and I agree. Like, I mean, because not to say that I think that doing that gray area is like the perfect idea. I think it would be a fun take if they did it more, but instead of having it like, oh, we're good, but also like we can see like everything. I'm more of like, put humanity on their own side and just say fuck everything else.
Mhm.
and I think that would be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, I think that's what they were trying to do because I remember seeing with like Diablo 3 stuff because I read into the lore because I just want to keep up with it even though I disagree with the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think like with Malthael and trying to wipe out humanity, they were talking about how humans being the Nephilim, the child between angels and demons, uh, they ended up. Or were you the one who told me this? That they ended up being gods in their own right,
Yeah, yeah, I think
like
so.
an army of gods. Do you remember?
Yeah, yeah, because there's the sin war that happens, which that's a whole that could be a whole podcast in itself, man.
Well, give us the rundown because because what you're talking about that's what happened, right?
Yeah, so essentially the idea of the idea of the Sin War was there's a 3-part book series that's about it, and it's in pretty much like it's mentioned I think in Diablo 3. They even I think maybe briefly mention it in Diablo 2. Uh, I'll have to go double check, but like the idea is Sanctuary of the World was created by the joining of heaven and hell. Um, the the gods, or not the gods. I'm sorry. The demon Lilith and her um, basically her lover was named, what was his name? Inarius? Yeah, Inarius. So Lilith and Inarius basically copulated and decided to create this place called Sanctuary, because through the constant battles of heaven versus hell, they basically got tired of the fighting. Like it's an eternal war. Both sides were just kind of like, can we just not fight for a change? So through them, and not only was Inarius and Lilith the only ones that thought this, there was more demons and more angels that also thought the same thing. So they went to this place called Sanctuary, which was hidden from the primevals and the angels and all that stuff. So no one knew this place existed except for this group. And in doing so, they had created these beings, which is in a sense humanity, called the Nephilim. So the Nephilim became these beings of just pure power that both emulated the power of heaven and hell combined into one being, which turned into humanity. And through time and evolution, the the pools got like the bloodlines got diluted. People started forgetting they had power, and essentially the Nephilim became kind of legend more so than anything. And as the time progressed, what happened is uh, the angels and the primevals eventually found out about Sanctuary, and there became a pact. And I'm paraphrasing like a motherfucker right now, because there's so many layers to this thing. But the angels and demons kind of came to an agreement that they would not directly intervene into Sanctuary, because they thought with how powerful the Nephilim were, not only were the Nephilim powerful enough to actually wipe out both sides if they really tried, but there was also kind of a sense of maybe we can try to convert one side to our cause more than the other kind of thing. So they came to the agreement of they could not directly influence uh, or they could not directly intervene, but they could influence the what was left of humanity. And then that's kind of where it came into what is Diablo now. And Diablo intervening and having his hands in everything is basically them playing the long game, and the games are taking place in during like Diablo and his brothers actually actively having hands in corrupting humanity to their will.
Yeah, to help in the Eternal War, right?
Yeah, versus heaven and hell.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, so isn't that like what you would like to see in Diablo? It sounds like you're
Yeah, that's that. I think that is exactly what I would love to see more of. Just because, if you ever read the Sin War books, there's this character in it who's the main character's name's Ildissian, and he essentially is the first of the new Nephilim, and he gets to meet some of the old Nephilim. He gets to see and watch, humans grow past their potential to become these ultimate beings of just raw power. And it just describes kind of like every character anyone plays in Diablo is supposed to be a Nephilim of some kind. And that's one of the things that they kind of touch up more so on the third one of like, oh, these guys are so powerful that they can take on Diablo, or they can take on, Malthael, or, all these guys to like destroy like the heavens or the hells. And I think that would be kind of cool because like through when you're reading the book, Ildissian kind of touches up on the fact that we are our own beings, and this fight between you two, that's your guys' fight. We didn't ask to be involved with this. We were just created, and like we're just here. So, and we're just trying to live our lives, kind of thing.
I feel that. I feel that. I can, yeah, and that's why I could see why you were saying the things you were saying about why it's okay that Imperius is the way that he is, and the extreme versions of good and evil being kind of removed from what it is to be humans, which is the middle and our own thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a story in and of itself for sure. I just personally, I just feel like I don't know. I'm more attached to the old stories. I mean, I'm not religious myself, but I was raised religious, and that stuff has like a special place in my heart. That's partially why I love like demon stuff, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like the coolest shit that you get to kill. Like, how do I put it? I have this idea about how people design villains nowadays that I don't necessarily like. How do I put it? It's like a lot of people they love these villains so much that when they're designing them, they like celebrate the villain a little
Mm-hmm.
too much. Like, oh yeah, this is the cool stuff. The villain's my favorite character. Fuck the hero. Like, the villain's where the business is at.
You see a
And
lot of that in pop culture nowadays.
right?
Yeah.
And like my whole thing with the way that story is supposed to be told, and what we should do as character designers is like you're not supposed to like create a villain with that kind of mentality in mind, where you're like, oh, I'm just celebrating how sexy this person is, or how evil this person is. Look how fun it is. Look how charming it is. Blah blah blah. You're supposed to design like the coolest thing that you could think of to fight against.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's cool. At least to me, like in terms of like tropes and stuff, like you're supposed to like Diablo and love the design, because that's like the thing you gotta take down. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? not because that's the thing you want to be.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, that's me.
No,
That's
I
why I
agree.
like. Oh yeah.
Well, to a point. So one of the things, it's kind of interesting you talk about this because I talked about this with my students recently that I teach, and one thing that we're talking about is character design, and we touched up on villains recently. And one of the things that I always try to tell people, especially like as a designer, is to think about, and you kind of mentioned it there, like think about what kind of trope does your villain fit in. In like, I think it also comes down to like what kind of design you're supposed to go for, because the designs, if you're going to go for like an action RPG like Diablo, like you want a cool ass character, like you want a dope ass looking like big red monster dragon dude that you fight at the end of the game, because like it's, you're building up to like your character models are getting progressively cooler and cooler and cooler until you get to, Diablo. But
Yeah.
one thing that I always like is the idea of, I think there is a quote that someone had mentioned to me one time, is the greatest villain is the one that can convince you that he's the good guy. And I love that mentality when it comes to certain games and like certain characters. Like the characters that you can fall in love with, and even though it's a bad guy, like a character like you're like, man, I hate this character, he is the worst, but god damn it, is he so cool. Like, and I feel like that's what Diablo kind of is. Like he's one of those characters where like, man, like fuck this character, he keeps kicking my ass, like he's the cause of all of this like grief and mischief, but then like, damn, is he cool.
Yeah, that's like James Woods' character in Hercules, Hades.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you love him, but he's like he's endearing because he's such a piece of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, yeah, I can get behind that.
But
Yeah,
I do agree that there's too many, especially nowadays, this like this glorification of like the villain. Um,
yeah,
Perfect example is like every single of the Marvel movies tries to do that with every single one of their villains. And don't get me wrong, some of them are dope. Like Killmonger, I loved Killmonger. Like he was one of my favorites of the villains that they made. Just because I'm like, okay, I see what he's getting at. This guy's got a point to he's not going about it necessarily the right way, but he's got some points here. And but then like the problem I always had was like characters like Thanos, where like they make you want to feel bad for Thanos, but like he's also supposed to be this ultimate bad evil villain that we've been building up to. So, and this isn't me shitting on any of the Marvel movies, because like I still love the Marvel movies, and Thanos is a dope ass character, but like I feel kind of like it's oversaturating it too much, and we're having too much of that shit, and we don't have enough of the black and white anymore that I think makes games like not only Diablo, but makes stories and villains like that so much cooler.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe we're just in the trend right now. I'm thinking we need a writer in this chat to help level us out, because I'm like yeah, I want to have a perspective from a person who actually specializes in this sort of stuff, because as artists we're just trying to get the design of these characters to be obvious so people can understand
Yeah.
them. But also just from my layman's perspective, I think it's just the trend right now, because for the longest time we've had like black and white morality in movies and games and stuff, and now people are like, oh, we want nuance and we want relative speaking and all of that, which is cool. It's cool in its own right, but I think it's just the trend right now, and that's why I think you and and I are also kind of craving or me more so, I think. I'm craving some more of that good black and white kind of shoehorn the moral message into the story sort of thing.
Yeah. No,
That's what
I agree though, because like I'm also craving that shit because like I don't know, I've been saying this for a hot minute. I feel like comic book movies have kind of almost oversaturated that kind of thing. Like it was cool for a while, but growing up, especially and like my background is games like Diablo and more shit like that. Just that whole idea of the good versus evil and good triumphing over evil, but like now we have this like gray area that always keeps showing up, and I'm just like, can we just like kill the big devil man? Because like the big devil man is not a good guy in any shape or form. Like he's literally called the Lord of Terror.
Yeah, it's simple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I mean, I do want to say that, like, hearing myself talk, I feel like I have to defend myself because, like, okay, so one of my favorite, um, one of my favorite ways that this was tackled, this concept that we're talking about, is Tremors. And when I say that, like, I want like a strong ass moral message, uh, in a movie, um, about like this sort of deal. It doesn't even have to be like, the devil sucks. It could be uh, like one of my favorite movies, Tremors. In Tremors, what they do, the whole movie, they're talking about you gotta have a plan with your life, you know,
Yeah.
and and they're fighting against just creatures that happen to be there. And the Tremors or the Graboids, they're not evil, right?
Yeah, no, they just exist.
Yeah, they just exist, and you have to have a plan. You have to be prepared, and you have to, you know, save the town and work as a community to beat your obstacles in your way. And I think that's a good message as well. And yeah, just tying it back to Diablo, um, and where and why I think that like relative stories are kind of meh to me is because if I'm gonna sit down and play something and get something out of it, if the message is clear, uh, it just it makes me feel good. And that's about it. It just makes me feel good. And I mean, and I'm not also, honestly, after thinking about it, I also don't want to shit on the nuanced displays of morality and storytelling, because there's a lot to think about and a lot to jerk yourself off on.
Yeah.
When you're like, ooh, I'm smart, I can think about the nuance of this topic, and you can think about it for weeks and weeks on end with your ambiguous endings and your ambiguous bad guys, and who was the real bad guy of Alien?
Yeah.
Was it the monster who's just unthinking, or was it capitalism?
See, humans were the monster the whole time. It was beauty that killed the beast.
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah, like,
thing.
oh yeah, like what they did. Yeah. Like in Dawn of the Dead, it's like, oh no, the zombies, they're just zombies, but the people, they're the bad guys. And like that trope, it comes up a lot. Yeah, a lot of people, yeah, we like that nuanced stuff, the nuanced approaches to good and evil, and that's cool too. But I think personally speaking, if you're talking about Diablo, which is clearly a demon, showing heaven in that way, yeah, just to bring it back to the beginning of the conversation, showing heaven in that way of like, oh, but if evil is purely evil, this is purely good, and we're right in the middle, it just doesn't sit right with me, because that's a story of, fighting against evil. You fight against Diablo because of, survival and the goodness of humanity and all that shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're throwing down. I think at the end of the day, for me, I'm a fan of a good story, and I think whether they go with a gray background or like a black and white, good versus evil kind of thing. It just comes down to, like, does it tell a good story? And as a designer, one thing that we have to think about is, do these designs fit excuse me do these designs fit in this like in that realm of that good story? And I think one of the biggest things that I could always compare this to is, like Lord of the Rings, like J.R. Tolkien and all of his writings with all the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings. There's a absolute like good versus evil kind of sentiment in that. And then we get into stuff like, say, Game of Thrones, where there's like, oh, well, there's good people, but the good people are dying because, there's no such thing as a pure good person, and there's good and evil, and there's like this gray area kind of thing. And it just kind of, it doesn't tell, like, I think you run into that problem that Game of Thrones runs into, is where if you start going down those paths, the story can be good, but then you start running into this, okay, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with all these people? If nobody's the good guy or nobody's inherently the bad guy, I have to either turn one of these guys into pure evil and now everyone gangs up on them and then we call the story good, or there's been an evil presence this entire time kind of thing.
I wouldn't say that in a framework of like a nuanced morality system in the story. I think you can have conflict that exists outside of that morality system and have it be a good story. And also, I do want to say that Lord of the Rings, a lot of people say that that's like a stereotypical good versus evil sort of story, and on the surface it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think deeper, if you understand the trope of a wizard, oh man, I could talk for hours about Lord of the Rings.
Same.
But yeah, that story is a lot more nuanced than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I'm currently rereading the Silmarillion right now too, so like that's why it's fresh on my brain.
Yeah, I feel you. But yeah, like I wouldn't shit on the. Or I'm not saying you're shitting on it, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that Game of Thrones has a aimless conflict structure. I think conflict in that can totally be built without morality, and I think that that George R.R. Martin did a good job making a good story around that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but because yeah, like as we're talking about it, I do want to like say that I don't think that a story with a clear good guy and a clear bad guy is inherently better than a more nuanced story. I just think that like in Diablo itself, and in like stories like Diablo.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those need to be a little bit more clear because you're literally fighting the devil.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, you can't really say, oh, maybe there's some moral ambiguity with, Diablo, but
Yeah, because he's the concept of bad, and like you can have a story about how somebody who is the very concept of evil and somebody who is the very concept of good being too extreme, and you're the middle ground. I just don't think that Diablo's the place for it.
no, I think I agree with you there too. And upon talking further with you, I 100% see where you're coming from too, because I mean, hell, the three prime evils are the personifications of terror, destruction, and hatred. Like, those are concepts. Those aren't really like a physical attribution that you can really bring to something. And I think that's kind of where that fun part comes with their designs. Just because like you have to personify, you know, these horrible things. Especially like, and if you go through all the different lords, because you got terror, destruction, then we have pain, anguish, sin is another one, and same with lies. Like we have all
Yeah.
of those concepts that don't really give a physical attribution to what they are. It's more of a sensation or like a feeling or an event kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, in that type of story, you really shouldn't have or I don't know. That's personal. Like in that type of story, especially it's a video game. You
Yeah.
know, it's a video game. You're killing stuff. You want to feel like you're on the right side of things. You know, this isn't Spec Ops: The Line, right?
But yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty on the nose with Diablo. I mean, this is going to be a really fun podcast to really talk about, and I think I'm really excited to see everyone's designs and the whole concept of how do you make the devil look different, or like how does everyone interpret the Lord of Terror?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you know what? That is another a weird thing about Diablo, right? Because he's the Lord of Terror. Uh whereas the devil himself, he is tied to so many concepts. So many like Western storytelling concepts that that's another thing that kind of makes Diablo hard to redesign, you know, because visually they pulled from a lot of um, Western storytelling stuff to make Diablo. Because I mean, the name itself, right? He's the devil himself. But then in the lore, he's the Lord of Terror, and all of his powers really come from terror itself, things that induce terror. Which it seems like a disconnect to me.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, because like you're giving him a singular concept, and he's supposed to be like I mean, hell, the game is named after this guy, and we're giving him a singular concept of terror. But like, I feel like there's so much more to just like more we could personify with him. I mean, the other thing though is like, have you heard of what the creation myth is in Diablo's world?
Um, I only know how Sanctuary was created.
Okay, so the idea of the heavens and hells and like the universe being created, there's actually a concept of why Diablo is labeled with terror. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, there were two beings in the beginning of time called Anu or Anu, Anu, and then the other one was just called the dragon. And basic,
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and the character Anu is supposed to be like the representation of light and all that is good in the world and stuff like that. And like he's supposed to have like the heart of creation and all that other stuff. Like it's basically God is what they're trying to personify. And the thing is the dragon is supposed to have, I believe, like 6 heads or like 7 heads. I can't remember. It's basically each one of the heads is supposed to be one of the prime evils and lesser evils. They're all represented through that being, And basically what happens is Anu and the dragon fight each other, they destroy each other, and through the remnants of whatever's left in the aftermath, you have the primevals, which are the leftovers of the dragon, and then you have the angels in the heavens, which is the leftovers of Anu.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of cool, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about them writing that part of a story for it.
Yeah. When was that created?
This probably, I think this came around like the Diablo 3 era.
It does sound like it.
Because it's kind of one of those things where I think it was like written in like a storybook, and someone's like, "Yeah, we're gonna add a creation myth too," and you're like, "Why did you need to do that? You don't need to do that."
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like a lot of the lore that I've been reading about Diablo, a huge thing that kind of like pops into my head every time I get another piece of knowledge is like, when did they write that though? You know, because like for me personally, like Diablo 1 and 2, that's more so on the nose of like what the Diablo story really means to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like a lot of stuff that came with 3, although it's cool for the sake of cool, and it bridges a lot of gaps and gives us a lot of information, I don't weight it as much as Diablo 1 and 2 in terms of importance to me personally.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the same. I think for me, Diablo 1 and 2, and then when I read those Sin War books, which is supposed to be kind of like pre Diablo 1 stuff, but like not it's not like too far in the distant past kind of thing. It's more of like a few hundred years ago kind of thing. Um, I dig it, just because I think they were also very well written books, and but I should probably go back and reread them as an adult, because when I read them as a kid, I was like all about the Diablo mythos, and I was just like, "Nom, nom, 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 give me all of that juicy lore."
Yeah. Wait, so Sin Wars came out around the time of D2?
Roughly, yeah.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah,
Also,
Sin War books.
that's pretty cool because that means that the seeds of like the Nephilim, quote unquote, were planted like way before Diablo 3.
Yeah, so the Sin War came out 7 years after the release of Diablo 2. So Diablo 2 came out in 2000, and Diablo the Sin War books came out in 2007.
Okay.
So there's like a small gap, but I'm pretty, and they were written in all three. There's 3 books, so like those 3 books coming out around 2007. Like, my theory is this guy was probably writing them as the game was kind of like just hitting its stride.
D2?
Yeah, so he probably, like, right as Diablo 2 was like coming out, like this guy, like, probably not in like right away. Probably like after like a few years that Diablo 2 had come out, they probably hired this guy to write this book, and in the height of the hype of Diablo 2 is when they were being written.
That makes sense.
So, and I think that's why I like them so much, because it brings that like feeling of the games into these books. Like, if you get a chance to read any of the books or listen to the audiobooks of them, they're pretty cheap, and they're great. Like, I don't think there's one I dislike.
All right. All right. I'm down. Yeah, because I look forward to seeing what Diablo and all of his Lord of Terror shenanigans would actually look like and play out, or how it would play out in a story. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if they're talking about like how he's interacting with his demons, that's like a lot of like juicy information that I'd like to know, or I mean, at least just experience. I don't know if I'd like to actually know it, but it would be cool to see happen, I guess, because I think D1 and D2 do a great job of like at least having that concept of Diablo like being so insidious and corrupting people just by being near them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that concept, and I yeah, I think seeing it or reading it in a book might not ruin it for me, because it's when you read something in a book like that, it sounds like it would be different than seeing it on screen or in
Yeah.
public. Or, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's still kind of, if the writer did like justice to it, I think it would have been done in a way that was a little bit more ephemeral.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they did. But yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, Amir, I think we're getting down to the last bit of time here for this podcast. Is there anything you'd like to kind of finish up on or say to end things?
Well, all right. Well, I I was talking out of my ass a lot for this podcast, and I just I thank you for bearing with me, and my, what's it called, incomplete thoughts regarding Diablo. I love the subject matter. It really touches me emotionally, but I'm not necessarily like a great writer or whatever. I'm just kind of like opinionated.
Yeah.
So thanks for bearing with me, and hopefully I was good to have on your show. I
Yeah.
love what we're doing, so I look forward to being on more.
Yeah, it was great. This was, first run. So, and like I said, we were both talking out of our ass. This is a subject I think hits not only you, but like me and many people of this kind of, not only like profession, but like just people in general. Like, there's so many people that love Diablo, and I think just kind of ranting about it. We could spend probably like a 4 hour podcast here, just ranting and raving about our opinions on Diablo if we wanted to.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Maybe we could do another Diablo character, have another stream, and probably even do like a um what's it called? A session where we rant about Diablo after we've actually played together. That'd be
That
cool.
that'd be fun. It'd be kind of cool is like maybe do like a live stream rant and rave like kind of thing. Like just
Yeah.
like say from this hour to this hour we're gonna just talk everything Diablo kind of thing, or not even just like Diablo, but like whatever subject we get like really passionate about like this.
Yeah, yeah, that would be cool. Like probably even while we're playing the game or something.
Yeah, hell yeah, I like that. So, all right. Well, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up. I want to tell people where they can find you or anything you want to plug and say.
Well, I work for Hitbox, so if you, I'm just gonna use this as an opportunity to plug it. Go to Hitbox Arcade and see what I do there. What kind of controllers we sell, and if you're into fighting games, you'd like what you see, hopefully. And you can also find my art at on ArtStation as Amir Alam, and you can find my art on Facebook as Amir Alam Art, and on Instagram, my name is Modoff. So that's about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you can get me at James starr-king on Instagram,
Awesome. James
and
starr-king.
that's yeah, James starr-king on Instagram, and I think my art station is also just James starr-king.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, you guys can also find both of us on that Monstieur podcast. Please feel free to check it out. I'm your host, CJ. You can find me also, CJ Marsh Art or artwork of CJ Marsh on pretty much any platform. They're all tied together. And I have a very unique name, so it's not hard to find me. Thank you for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again. Work out the kinks for this one, because this was, like I said, the first one of hopefully many. We'll see how this goes. And, hope everyone enjoyed the show. And if you guys, could just give us a like, thumbs up, blah blah blah. You know,
Yeah,
all all those fun things. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. All right. See you guys later.
Bye.
later.